welcome to this first panel of the Peace for Palestine Testimonies of Resilience event. We're very happy, very honored to have Sandra and both here. For those of you that haven't read the bios, Sandra from Anera, I'm sure they'll say a bit more about themselves. I'm going to hand over to them so there's no delays. And again, Sandra, thank you very much for being here.
Great. Thanks, Gerhard. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. I think I'm going to start. I'll start by sharing my screen. I have a presentation for you. I figured there's so much information, so much to discuss that sometimes. So I thought, we can start not with the beginning, because the beginning, dates back to about 1948, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the wars that have been happening on Palestine since the first Intifada. The Intifada, for those of you who don't know, Intifada means uprising. And in 1987, there was the first uprising of Palestinians. That was the first major event after 1967, where 1,100 Palestinians were killed. Subsequently, there was other Intifadas, other massacres, other operations in Gaza, etc., that happened. And all this has been happening for the last 20 years. So this is something that's been going on for quite some time. In the West Bank, we have also, prior to October 7th, there has been an expansion of settlements. There was 146 settlements, created 191 outposts, over 478,000 settlers. 15% of the actual population of West Bank were in the West Bank. Now, if you follow the Palestine-Israeli issues and the conflict, you know that in Oslo, one of the agreements in Oslo was that there would be no more settlement expansions, but we can see that that did not happen. That continued. There's been thousands of house demolitions, land confiscation on a wild scale for military and settlement purposes, military outposts and settlements that I mentioned previously. There was restriction of movements. We have the wall, the apartheid wall, the separation wall, whatever it is you want to call it. There's that basically cuts through all of the West Bank, making it extremely difficult to travel from the north to the south of the West Bank. Military aggressions, quite frequently raids and operations in all cities in the West Bank, particularly in the north, Jenin, Tulkarem, Salfit, Nablus, and in the south, Hebron, Bethlehem. Settler violence has increased extremely quite a bit in the last 3 or 4 years. Settlers are allowed to carry assault rifles. They will be out on the streets. They will go into villages and do attacks on the villages, including burning homes, burning cars, setting fields on fire, and then thousands of political detentions. This includes administrative detention, and an administrative detention means that they can be arrested and they can be held for 3 months at a time without any allegations or anything that's brought up against them. And that can be renewed as much as they feel that it's necessary for the security of Israel. And we've had people in administrative detention who have been held without trial for over 20 years. Specific to East Jerusalem, the East Jerusalem is really cut off from the rest of the West Bank. It's surrounded by 14 Israeli settlement blocks. It's really kind of surrounding Jerusalem. They're restricted in terms of zoning and planning. They cannot build or expand their own homes. They have temporary residence status. The people in Jerusalem have a special ID. It's the blue ID, where they maintain a presence. They have to maintain a presence in Jerusalem, and they aren't allowed to travel easily out of the country. They have to apply for their CBC in order to travel. There's in the last 5 years or so, there has been less marriages from the West Bank to in Jerusalem, because it's very hard for people from the West Bank to get Jerusalem IDs. So family reunification is a huge problem, as is child registration for West Bank ID holders who marry people in East Jerusalem. There's high taxation. They pay a high arona, is what it's called in Arabic. And of course, there's lots of political arrests and detentions in East Jerusalem. So that was happening prior to October 7th. Now, after October 7th, one of the things that people don't have their eye on is the fact that the West Bank is extremely volatile. The situation in the West Bank is getting worse and worse every day. There have been 55 targeted airstrikes, and in those airstrikes, over 146 people have been killed. 716 people have been killed so far in the West Bank since October 7th. We have over almost 6,000 injuries, and 240 of those are from settler attacks. We have over 10,800 arrested. That's the highest that it's been in the last 10 years. There's been house demolitions, people have been displaced, and over 530,000 people have been infected. The amount of destruction that's happening actually in Tulkarm and Jenin is the most, and there are places in Jenin and Tulkarm that look like Gaza right now. We've all been following the news in Gaza, and the situation is quite, you know, sometimes you don't have the words for it. You think it can't get any worse, and it does every single day. And I think, you know, today was worse than yesterday, and tomorrow will be worse than today. The blockade since 2007 restricted the movement and goods and services coming into Gaza. So before the siege, there was there wasn't an adequate amount of supplies in Gaza that were coming in. There was frequent military operations. There was always energy and water shortages. Gaza is known to be one of the most densely populated areas globally, and this was when it was all of Gaza, from the north to the south, from all the way from Beit Hanun to Rafah. 80% of the population depended on humanitarian aid. 60% of youth were unemployed, and the health system was on the verge of collapse. So these numbers are actually, I put this together 2 days ago, and they're already dated. The casualties are over 41,300 people have been killed. I think we're getting close to almost 100,000 people wounded. This does not include the people that are suspected under the rubble. Some people have estimated that the loss of life will reach over 200,000 people when the dust finally settles. Over 21% of the population is now disabled. This means that they have physically disabled. They've lost their limbs, arms, legs, etc. From the different bombings that have happened. 1.9 million people are displaced. That's 9 out of 10 people that are displaced in Gaza. These people are mostly located in the south, and when we say the south, that means in the areas from Deir al-Balah and below, Deir al-Balah, Khan Yunis, and Rafah. 63% of the homes have been destroyed. Healthcare, which was on the verge of collapse, has completely collapsed. It actually collapsed in December. 84% of the health facilities have been destroyed or damaged. There isn't a completely functioning hospital. Some hospitals are partially functioning, but there is no completely functioning hospital. 625,000 children are out of school, and this is the second year that they will be out of school. And when you think about the amount of lost learning children have had in the last 4 years or 5 years since COVID, globally, we lost a lot of education when COVID happened. But now children in Gaza, they're going on their second year without being able to enter school or have education. 96% of the population is food insecure. I think that there isn't a single person that doesn't go to bed hungry in Gaza. Everybody is facing some sort of starvation. I've heard the word famine being used in Gaza. This is not a famine. Famine is used when there is a natural disaster, something that is created from the elements. This is a man-made phenomena. It is starvation. There is nothing else that we can say about it. So Anera, in terms of what we've been doing during this time, we first began in October 8th. We have a staff member. His name is Sami Khader. He when this first happened, he called me on the 8th and said that there was already displaced people. And the situation, if you remember, was quite frightening about the immediate response that Israel had to October 7th. So when I talked to Sammy, I told him, Sammy, listen, let's sit tight. Let's see what happens in the next few days and see how we can respond. Sammy said, there's no way that I'm going to sit tight. People are in need. I'm going to go and help the people. And even if that means that I would die in the process. So when this happened, we had to see how we would support our staff on the ground. And we started immediately distributing non-food items, NFIs is what we call them, including hygiene kits, mattresses, and blankets to people who were immediately displaced in those first few days. When October 13th happened, that was the day that Israel announced that they wanted all the residents, residents in the north had to move down to the south, and that's when the first mass displacement happened with the people in Gaza. That's when we started our other life-saving interventions, including food security, food distribution, and NFI. So to date, Anera has been able to almost bring in 1,000 truckloads of aid. We've just hit yesterday our 40 million meal mark, which is quite an accomplishment, but it's very frustrating that we're still here, that we're still providing food, that this is still a situation where people are starving and we need to support them in terms of providing food. We've distributed thousands of blankets, tents, mattresses, hygiene kits. We were one of the first organizations to do MHM, menstrual hygiene management, and distributed almost 60,000 menstrual pads and feminine hygiene kits to women. And we've conducted over 450 psychosocial sessions for children. Our psychosocial sessions take place in temporary learning centers. We've created temporary learning centers for the early years, where we're providing support to children in terms of basic educations, really just trying to keep them up to date in terms of their reading, writing, arithmetics, their numbers, their colors, some of those basic skills, because it's quite difficult to actually have actual education, but we do want to try to have them retain some of the information that they have. We also have been doing some health clinics. We have 3 mother and child clinics. We have 2 wound management clinics that have become almost like urgent care units in the different areas. We have a non-communicable disease clinic, and we've implemented over 70 free medical days. And along that, there's about 36,000 people in the south of Gaza who've benefited from our health interventions. So there's a lot of challenges and constraints when we're doing this work, and this is some of the questions that we get asked out a lot as Anera. Is aid really going in? Are people getting support? We hear that no trucks are being able to come in, but there are trucks. So there are trucks, and I think this is something we have to be very careful about when we're talking about what's going on in Gaza. Trucks are getting in, but when you think about the amount of trucks that were getting in prior to October 7th, there was an average about 500 trucks per day. And this is prior to 2020, there was about 1,000 trucks going in a day. But now we are down to an average of about 100 trucks per day. So when you think about the extreme need, you think about the market that's been depleted since October 7th, up to October 7th, up to December, you could find goods in the markets in Gaza locally, but that has been depleted. So now there's about 100 trucks that come on average, and that ebbs and flows. One day you might get 140 trucks, the next day it might be 60, the third day it might be 0, and then it will go back to 140 trucks. But on average, since October 7th, 100 trucks have been able to go in. To get these trucks in, it's really quite a challenge for all international organizations. I'm speaking on behalf of all the organizations working in this field, including our colleagues in UNRWA, WHO, UNICEF, to get approvals from Israeli authorities in terms of the goods coming in. Right now, Israel is prioritizing food, shelter, and health needs. So we have not been able to get any education material into children. We have not been able to get any psychosocial material into into the area. There's things that are considered dual use. So for example, when we want to bring in a tent, we have to make sure that we send the specifications, because if there's metal poles or if there's nails, they might be considered dual use and they will not approve those. So getting approvals from Israeli authorities is always a challenge. It's quite costly to bring in these trucks from Egypt, and from prior to May 7th, we were getting quite a few trucks in through Egypt or through Jordan. The routes are not always open. The trucks go in 2 or 3 times a week, and it's, as I said, it's quite costly just to bring in the trucks up to Gaza, and then almost as costly to bring them in from Gaza into our distribution centers that are located throughout Gaza. And then there's chaos and looting. I think this is something that's been in the news a lot. Yes, there is a lot of chaos right now. There's a lot of looting, but we have to understand people are starving, people are scared, people are frustrated and worried that they're not going to be able to get food for their children. So this has been happening for the last few months. And I say, if this had happened anywhere else in the world, if this had happened in New York or in London, the looting and the chaos would have happened almost immediately. In Gaza, it took almost 10 months for it to get to this level. So there's a lot of recommendations that we have in terms of how we can combat this. And I say all the time that one of the things that we need to do is always demand an immediate ceasefire and a just solution. And I think these two need to go together hand in hand. There needs to be an immediate ceasefire. We need to stop the hostilities and the attacks on Gaza and the West Bank, but there needs to be a just solution. We have been in an occupation for far too long. We need to stop the occupation. We need to find a just solution where people can live together in peace and have access to services. We need to flood the market with humanitarian aid. One of the reasons that there is so much chaos and so much looting right now is people, as I mentioned, are scared and starving. They need to see that, hey, aid is coming in. We need to be able to bring in 200, 300, 400 trucks a day. And if those trucks get looted the first day and the second day, that's fine. But as soon as people realize that trucks are coming in, then that will stop, and we can go back to being able to distribute food and aid to the people that need it. Advocacy and lobbying. This needs to be advocacy and lobbying on many levels. One, the amount of aid going in, the routes that we have. There is no security forces in Gaza right now, what we generally call the blue police, or any kind of security apparatus is missing. And this is another reason why there's so much looting. That needs to be advocated for. And we need to strengthen local capacities and ensure that Gaza takes the lead in the recovery process, and not just the recovery process, but this just solution. So there's a lot of conversations that are happening right now, and people in Gaza and Palestinians in general are not being included in these overall discussions. They're not on the table. And then the other question that I get quite a bit is, what can we do? What can I as an individual do? One of the main things that you need to keep doing is just keep talking and posting about Palestine and the war on Gaza. People think that this is not doing anything, but I think it's doing quite a bit. We see the marches, we see the demonstrations. We notice that this keeps going up and up, and this is something that is really starting to make a change. People are starting to talk about, and when I say people, I mean governmental officials, are talking about a ceasefire. They're talking about an end of arms to Israel. So things are happening. We need to keep posting. We need to keep talking. I know it's tiring. I know that you feel that you're talking to the abyss, that there isn't any ears out there, but it is working. So please keep doing that. Advocate for journalists and the press to be allowed access to all areas in Gaza. This is extremely important. One of the things that we have seen in the last few weeks is that journalists are not allowed to cover the situation in Gaza. And this is because they don't want us to keep talking about Palestine and Gaza. This is the first time in history that we see a war happening in live time. It's being live streamed. We see the images. They're horrific images. I'm sure if you're like me, they haunt you in your morning and in your night, but we need to keep seeing those images so people can push for an end to what's happening. And then contribute to fundraising efforts. There's a lot of different fundraising efforts. It doesn't have to be an organization like Anera, but UNRWA is an extremely important organization. We'll hear from Hani in a minute, but UNRWA is important not only for the amount of services that they provide to the people, but for the political issues that UNRWA is the one that keeps the right of return and the right of refugees at the forefront of all discussions. So we really need to keep pushing to support UNRWA. And, you know, by joining these different organizations, by joining the people that are working this, you're helping support this horrific and this really unimaginable difficulties that people are facing in Gaza. So I thank you, and I'll stop there. Thank you.
Sandra, thank you very much. I just want to remove the pin. I didn't say this in the beginning. I wasn't expecting questions to start coming in. If you do have any questions, please post them in the Q&A box. If you want to address a question to a specific speaker, please add their name to the question. I'm going to hand over to Hani because he needs to leave us at some point in time during the panel. You weren't here in the beginning, Hani. Thank you very much for joining us, and I'm going to just hand straight over to you.
Okay, can you hear me okay? How are you guys? I'm at the airport right now, flying to Los Angeles for a fundraiser for UNRWA USA, and I'm so excited to be with you. My title is the Senior Director of Philanthropy at UNRWA USA. That's it's an American charity that supports the work of UNRWA. In fact, just 2 days ago, we're trying to pass a resolution for Congress to refund UNRWA. As you understand, not only that UNRWA is being denied the funding, they're also being attacked and misinformation. And if you now Google UNRWA, you will find an Israeli-funded website that spreads misinformation with zero evidence about the agency. So continue to show up for UNRWA, because this is really the incubator for the Palestinian cause, in the sense that, you know, the right to return alive Palestine refugees, whatever UNRWA does, it's all temporary solutions. Can you imagine 75 years of temporary solutions until a just political solution exists? And that hasn't happened really in a very long time. And at UNRWA USA, I just give you a couple of facts. Prior to these attacks, we were just your average American charity that supports the work of the agency. And then ultimately, October 7th happened. A lot of people took interest in the work of UNRWA USA, and they started funding. So we've seen funding grow maybe like tenfolds. And, you know, that's a testament to the generosity of the public and grave situation in Gaza, but also the vote of confidence in the agency. I go to rallies all the time. It's one thing to go to a rally and, you know, speak out, but it's really another when you put your money where your mouth is. I've done a lot of not lobbying. In my personal capacity, I was advocating with members of Congress. When I talk about Gaza, they never pay attention. The moment I tell them, hey, we raised 1.5 million in your district, or $1 million here, or $500,000 there, that's when they start taking notes. So remember, a lot of people in Congress are all aware about money, because they know if somebody gave $1 million to Anera, they would give 100,000 maybe to their opponent or something like that. So let's just really be aware that this is in some cases it's a money game, but in some cases it is not. My job is to really to focus in making sure UNRWA has resources it needs. As we speak, UNRWA USA is being sued by a vile group of right-wing folks who really want to bring down our work. We think this is a frivolous lawsuit, but we're working around that. The sad thing is, this lawsuit froze us in our track for about a month, because, you know, we did not want to aggravate the situation. And then we said, screw it, we are going back to sending money to Gaza. Yes, your money is getting to Gaza. We have a 2-week turnaround. That means a lot of NGOs that are capable and organizations I admire, they're not moving the funds as much as they want to, or as much as they would like, because restrictions, banking have been blown up, ATMs don't exist. Some agencies have done better than others. You end up with a musical chairs game where like a charity has $500,000. They call UNRWA, they call Anera, like, hey, do this project for us. Anera is unique and UNRWA is unique because we implement the work we are working on, meaning we're not just taking the money and giving it to somebody. This is actually the work that, the staff is doing, all that work. Just very quick to add to what Sandra already said. Before October, remember, 55% of the people of Gaza, at least 55% of the people of Gaza were in food aid. Unemployment rate among the youth was 60%, and getting in and out of Gaza was a hassle, if not miraculous. So this was not really a good situation to begin with. The biggest story out of Gaza before this was the Palestinian families that they tried to smuggle themselves out to Turkey or Greece. A lot of those families perished in the Mediterranean trying to get to Gaza, to Turkey or to Greece. My nephew is one of those folks. He was rescued off the coast of Turkey by the coastal guards. He's a young man, wanted to go get to Greece and get the job. The Greek coastal guard deflated the boat and told the Turkish coastal guard to come rescue them. If the Turkish coastal guards weren't there in time, these guys would have been among the statistics. So just to set the context, that's not to say that Gaza has not seen better days. This is really a genocide. This is my personal truth. A lot of people tiptoe around this term, especially in our space. I push back against a lot of UN agencies that talk about Gaza if it's like an earthquake situation, where it's like, oh, we need to get food to these folks, but they never establish the context. They never talk about Palestinian rights. So this is where it gets tricky around, in addition to my work with UNRWA USA, and I love the work we're doing and the advocacy and speaking in the media when they would listen or when they would invite us. I engaged a lot with the meetings, high-level meetings, I would say, with the White House and State Department and all these actors. Waste of time, really total waste of time. These folks don't really care. In fact, and you could see that not only that they don't see the Palestinians in Gaza as equals, but also they deny the Palestinian leaders who are Democrats to go speak at the DNC. So not only that they don't see us in Gaza, they also don't see us worthy of their time here. And that sort of like changes a lot of the dynamics in the communities. Independent of all this, my family was in the thick of North Gaza, man-made starvation. And about January, we started putting together a soup kitchen for our neighborhood. We started a project called the Gaza Soup Kitchen. It is started because I saw a video of my sister trying to cook, to bake bread with animal feed. And that was like, that's it, And remember, a month prior to that, my brother was paraded almost naked with other Palestinian men dubbed as Hamas militants. And my brother, I know him, like when you see this video, you see like, maybe they're bad people. They're not, they're just your average Palestinian guys. And then we called them out and the media reacted like, hey, I'm telling you, I put in my neck on the line. This is my brother. He's not a fighter or a militant. Quietly, the night after they released most of these guys, probably all of them. So that tells you sort of like the struggle we've had. And prior to that, just exactly 2 weeks prior, November, our brother Majid and his family, his wife Safa, Siwar, Omar, Ali, and Rayman were all killed in an Israeli airstrike, American-made bomb. Thank you, taxpayers. And that changes the dynamic. Before you're trying to be neutral, cute, all that stuff, but it's not. It's a lot more personal now. And it's hard because we have not stopped the grieving. We have not started the grieving because, this situation hasn't abated. People are still being killed. About 2 months ago, a cousin of ours was killed. So this is happening. This is where our families are. In fact, my family and I were in Gaza just weeks before October. And just in the personal level, my mother tells me after the fact, like every day I would wake up rushing to go see my brother Majid and spend time with him. And neither did I or didn't she knew that we were really saying our goodbyes, because this is the last time we would see them. I happened to have a lot of photos for the kids, and that sort of like even made it more painful, because these things like, hey, I thought I'm going to hang out with my brother again. That's not going to happen. He's like the closest to me. And we were robbed that opportunity. Not only that, we've also lost our homes, the 2 homes we own. So the family is effectively homeless. So with that came the birth of the Gaza Soup Kitchen to provide meals. We do not bring any aid there. That's the job of NGOs that I hope you continue to support. This is where we buy food and we forage. You know, we get some of the farms. When the original meal we cooked there was zucchinis. We're overgrown. They were supposed to be like for mahshi, you know, little like small in size, but because they were not cared for or picked because of the military campaign in Gaza, they were like the size of the pumpkin. So my brother went to a farm, bought them, chopped them up, and cooked them. And guess what? 2 of the guys who picked zucchinis were killed by drones. So there is a lot of risk around them. But then again, we want to make sure people stay where they are. My family refused to leave north of Gaza because, you know, they paid dearly and they paid a lot of trauma and losses. But sort of like now folks in the south regret leaving because it's quick, you know, fast operation in the north, brutal, large bombs, everything dropped in North Gaza. Yes, famine, but in the south and the middle, the bombing comes down to the neighborhood, move here, move there, evacuate from here. So it is not a great situation. We ended up alive because of the disruption in NGO delivery and access. All these Palestinian expats and their allies are doing their own project, mom and pop relief efforts. We are one of those. There's so many. And, you know, thanks to the power of social media, we were able to tell our stories, share uplifting pictures, because, you know, we're all traumatized watching this. And sometimes we like a glimpse of good news. We've learned that really it's important to balance the positive, uplifting, like a kid gets a meal, but then establish the context and show the crowd of people who are desperate for a meal. Because if we don't do that, then we're like just tone deaf and not being accurate. Now, early on, we were thinking like show the positive, but then I would get trolled by Israeli bots or humans. They tell me like, hey, there is no famine. There is. So we were forced to show those less than dignified videos of the crowd at the soup kitchen to just communicate the point like, hey, the famine is real. This is a full-blown famine, like the World Food Program people. So we're continuing to do this work. We sadly, we had to expand to doing a healthy clinic to provide care for our neighbors. The clinic sees about 50 to 70 patients a day, and it's free medications and all that. And hopefully, if you tune in tomorrow, we may open a school. That's going to be really, my understanding is going to be the first public school to open in Gaza. It's going to have 250 students. It's going to be accredited by, so people who go to first grade will get, this will be like considered that it's not just learning, it's a formal education. And we love that we get able to do this and get access to the land and get access to the resources because the community saw the work we've done since the soup kitchen started. We hope to do this other areas. We hope we don't have to do any of this because we want a ceasefire. But again, remember, UNRWA remains really the largest humanitarian actor inside Gaza. Just talk about scale. You know, there's 30,000 staff for UNRWA. 13,000 of them are in Gaza. About 5,000 of them are working now. And those are 99% of UNRWA staff are Palestine refugees themselves. So they're doing the work to provide for their community, but also this is the upper middle class. And that sort of like explains why Israel targets so many of UNRWA infrastructure, where 70% of the infrastructure for UNRWA was targeted. 220 staff were killed by Israel, sometimes in their work, sometimes in their home with their families. And, you know, we continue to UNRWA. When I say we, it's UNRWA, I'm UNRWA USA. It's the agency that support the work. 60% of the aid that comes in from Gaza, comes through UNRWA. Right now, the Israelis are making it hard to bring in aid, as Sandra had shared. It is not easy. It's also messy, and there is dishonesty. I'll give you a couple of examples where there is dishonesty from the Israeli side. So one time they will say, they will tell the US, hey, we allowed UNRWA 10, we gave UNRWA 10 permits to go deliver aid to the north, which is factually true. But in reality, they do not really let the mission go through. It's like maybe one time out of this 10, the UNRWA trucks got to north of Gaza. The 9 others is either impeded, stopped, denied access, or bombed. So that's one dishonesty. The second one is the truck count. So the Israelis report like, hey, we delivered 300 trucks of food to Gaza. Remember, when they say delivered, somebody else paid for this food. They have nothing to do, but only let it happen, right? So you got people bringing stuff from Jordan, from Egypt, which got in a lot slower since they closed Rafah crossing in May. So what they do is we say we delivered 300 trucks, and the Americans, oh, okay, we let 300 trucks. But the reality is it's only 100 trucks. What happened is the Israelis make the truck like a third because they say a safety measure. So this way they're counting these numbers when in reality there is less aid that's coming in. And they hate the NGOs for calling out on this because they want you to use the numbers they're using. But in reality, it's a false. There's a lot of pushback. They want you to believe this is an UNRWA bad organization, but guess what? They just bombed the World Food Program. They killed a colleague from Anera, Musa, may his soul rest in peace. They've killed 220 UNRWA staff. They also killed these World Central Kitchen staff. These are, remember, these are their friends. This is their supposedly their favorite partner. And that's what they did to their favorite partner, meaning that they're, they're just delivering aid and it's trusted and in a way that the Israelis wish. And it's unfortunate that we continue to deal with this while grieving for our families, worrying about our colleagues, and just trying to figure out solutions. What we've learned, and this would be my last thought, is that providing aid is a distraction for the folks who help it. So we have now about 20 people working in the soup kitchen. 10 of those are women who became a support group. Every day they show up and they're like cook together and they cook for the whole town. And the kitchen in North Gaza provides meals for up to 800 people, 800 families. Sometimes it's 600 families based on what they cook. But also we have a soup kitchen in Zawaida. The Zawaida one is intriguing. It started in Rafah. Then Rafah got bombed. They went Deir al-Balah. Then Deir al-Balah got bombed. And then now they're in Zawaida. Next, we don't know where it is. And these folks are displaced as the Palestinians themselves. They're grieving. They've lost everything they do, but they continue to provide the aid. We hope to close our soup kitchens yesterday because the need wouldn't be there, but the reality is Gaza will need a lot more attention as call to action. Really support products that reflects your value in this world. Just support Palestinian voices, center their voices, and that's what's key to the organizers of this panel. They invited folks that speak in the I statements. That's pretty powerful. That one of the main reasons I'm doing a lot more interview is my boss, DEI training and all that. So we've taken things from that and we implemented in the real world. Also be engaged in the political space. Don't just show up now. Show up every time and talk and let them know you care about this. It's one thing for Hani with the family in Gaza to tell a congressman in Louisiana that we care about this. It's another when the Jewish Voice for Peace makes a statement and organizes the largest rally, and the Methodist Church makes a statement. So I want to leave it there with you. I'll let you know, you could do a lot more. Just continue to be supportive, and it's going to get tricky with the election because Gaza became priority number 100, and sadly Lebanon now is surging, and I pray for the safety of everyone there in Gaza, Lebanon. The West Bank is also suffering in silence, but Sandra covered that. And my friends in Jerusalem, the Palestinian friends, continue to say homes removed and destroyed. So please, thank you so much. And I'll be in no camera now, but I may be around for a few more minutes. Thank you.
Hani, thank you very much for that. Thanks for sharing. Enjoy the flight and good luck with that. There are a few questions. I'm going to read them for you. You can also, if you're welcome to look through the questions, Sandra, if you want to. The first question, I think the person has left. I think they might be struggling with Wi-Fi. It's from Dr. Umar, who is based in Gaza, and I think he's trying to connect in somewhere with Anera in terms of getting. I just want to scroll to the other part of his question now. Things like tents. Sandra, if there are people that want to try and connect with Anera, how would they be able to do that? And are you getting lots of those requests? I don't know what the situation is for where you are.
Yeah, thank you, Jared. We are getting a lot of requests. My phone blows up every day from people that have gotten a hold of my number and try to call me to try to see, and we do try to direct people to our offices. We have an office in Khan Yunis, we have one in Deir al-Balah, and we have one in the north. And there are staff members who take the requests of people. Sometimes we will have some commodities that we can give. Tents are right now more expensive than gold because the situation is so severe, and people are actually literally living on the streets and don't have anything above their heads. And unfortunately, we have not been able to get that many tents in. But there is a situation where once we do get tents, we go and coordinate with other organizations for those who have gotten tents, but it's very small. And I think this is another criticism that aid organizations hear all the time. They say, we hear Anera is working, but I haven't received anything. And it's true. It's probably quite true. Anera is working, and there's quite the possibility that a large percentage of the population did not receive anything, because we are only able to support about 8 to 9% of the population that's affected right now. UNRWA was able to do a lot more when they were able to do things. Again, going back to what Hani said, UNRWA is the largest service provider for the people that are displaced. So you can reach out to our offices in the different locations, Khan Yunis, Deir al-Balah, and the north in Gaza. We do what we can. We try to support as we can. But unfortunately, the need is so great that it's, the drop in the water or the drop in the ocean is not even accurate in terms of what we're trying to do right now.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Sandra, there's two questions that I think are related, so I'm going to read both to you. The first question is just, is there aid getting into the northern parts of Gaza, and if so, how much? And then the second question is, I hear from friends in Gaza about canned and processed food being distributed, but I've heard that Israel makes sure that the food is poor quality. Is this well-founded and true? How much fresh nutritional food is getting in?
Great, thank you. Two very excellent questions in terms of what's happening. I want to address the processed food and the canned foods, because this is something that shocked me a few months back when we started our NCD, our non-communicable disease clinic. We found that people that came in, there was an increased amount of people who had hypertension and an increased amount of people who had lost weight, and the average weight loss was about 11% of their body weight. And this is across the board. And this is because there is a lack of nutritious food coming in. The food that we have are processed, they're canned, they're ready to eat, which are full of sodium, full of processed chemicals. It's not the most nutritious food. So this is a situation that is extremely, hard to work in as a mother. When I think about the kind of food that I want to give my kids, I definitely don't want to give them canned processed food, the same canned processed food every single day. But unfortunately, it is very difficult to get produce in. Cold chain is a real issue. Bringing in cold chain so that the vegetables or meat or eggs or milk do not spoil is difficult. A lot of times these trucks, when they are transporting the goods, will sit on the different spots and different borders for up to 10 to 12 hours. That would cause spoilage. So we're not able to do that. Anera does provide some fresh baskets to people, but this is a very costly intervention. And so we definitely do not do as much as we want to do. This is something that we're trying to look at in terms of how we can support farmers, how we can support more fresh produce coming in. Advocating, lobbying for a cold chain to go in, and the integrity of the cold chain to be kept is what we're also advocating and lobbying for. Sadly, it's not a positive answer. The other question is food getting into north? Yes, for the last 2 months, more food has been going to the north and actually to the south. So now we're seeing the phenomena of what was happening in the north happening in the south. I've seen pictures of children who are skin and bones and who are literally starving in the south, because now since May 7th, since the closing of the Rafah border, trucks have not been able to go into the south easily. And when the trucks do come in, there's a higher cases of looting because the desperation and the starvation is so much more in the south. Right now, there's trucks going in from the north through Zakim, border crossing, and Erez. And so we are able to get food in and have been able to get food in for the last 2 months. But prior to that, we were able to get support in the north because 3 of our staff members refused to go down on October 13th. So we had a base, so we had staff members who could carry out our work in the north. The other difficulty that was not questioned, but is a question people ask is, well, if you get food in the north, why can't you take it down to the south? Because again, getting that route approved and being able to do it and getting those trucks in and having them be the route coordinated so that they are not hit is quite difficult and almost impossible. So it's difficult to bring our food from the north to the south as well.
Thank you, Sandra. There's 2 people that have asked if you could share the slides, Sandra. I'll be in touch with you afterwards if that's okay, and then we can post it maybe on our social media page or something like that, if you don't mind. Is there a best way or a best place for advocating for journalist access, social media writing to governments? What can be done to actually get international foreign journalists into Gaza and the West Bank, but Gaza predominantly for now?
But I think the first step is one, your government officials, call them and ask them why there isn't freedom of press. This is one of our fundamental rights as citizens, as US citizens. So why isn't there freedom of press in Gaza? What is it that they're trying to hide? You demand to see what is happening. If this is a security situation, then you demand that you are able to see this. That's the first and then probably the strongest. On your social media channels, the more noise we make about this, the more we can do. I saw a question or a comment about the uncommitted or alternative parties. I think one of the biggest indicators that our voices are being heard is the fact that we have Kamala Harris running right now for president. And I think that is largely due to the amount of outrage that was happening in terms of the current administration stance on the war on Gaza and what's happening in Gaza. So I do think that public social media posts, talking to people, getting people to ask these same questions. A lot of people take it for granted. A lot of people don't know that maybe journalists are not being let in. So starting conversations and having conversations about that is also pretty important.
Sandra, so we did receive a few questions that some people emailed me. I'm going to ask you one of those. A few weeks ago, one of your trucks was hit by a strike. I don't know if you want to talk about just the surrounding thing that happened. The question was related to that, asking, there's been a lot of claims about aid getting diverted. There was, I forget the person's name now, from the US who said they haven't seen any evidence that aid's getting diverted. What is your experience on the ground with that?
So for those of you who did not hear, it was almost 2 plus weeks ago now, 2 weeks last Thursday, that our convoy was hit in an airstrike. And what happened was there was community members. Our transportation company works with community members, and they sometimes support them in leading convoys because they are from the communities. They feel that they can best divert people who might be prone to looting. So these community members had heard that our aid trucks, which were carrying food and medical items, we were going to take them to the Emirati hospital, that it was going to be looted. So they came and said that they wanted to lead the convoy, and our transportation company agreed to this. 45 minutes into the convoy, the lead car was struck and four young men were killed, the youngest of which was 17, and the others were in their 20s. The fact that this aid convoy was hit is just another instance of how we have to advocate to ensure the safe facilitation of humanitarian aid to the people. And this includes the safe access to those performing humanitarian aid work, whether they're from the community, whether they're from the organizations, or whether they're from other agencies. Humanitarian aid does have to flow in. Is aid being diverted? I think that in any war situation, we might have cases of that. For Anera, we have very strong policies in place. We've been on the ground in Gaza for over 50 years. Anera is a 56-year-old organization. We've been on the ground for over 50 years in Gaza. Our staff members are all from the community. We really don't have international or expat staff on our team in the Palestine office. We are all from the communities that we serve. So we are known to work with the community members and ensure that the aid goes where it needs to go. Have we been approached to do this before, prior to October 7th? Yes, this would be something, as you know, we would be asked if we could give our pipes to, to donate our pipes or our water networks for other purposes, and we always say no, and we don't do it. And it's pretty much because they know the work that Anera has been doing and the impact that it has on the people that we've been allowed to do our work. So for Anera, we don't have that as an issue as much as other organizations, and these other organizations who are new to the Gaza scene. A lot of organizations haven't worked in Gaza before, but are supporting the response now. So they don't know the communities, they don't know the people, they don't know the best ways to navigate this minefield. So it does happen, but for us as Anera, we've been fortunate enough to be able to navigate that.
Thank you. Sandra, a quick question for you from, are there some model letters or templates that we can use when we write to governments, any that you're aware of?
Yeah, I have seen some templates that are available. I think there might be even some templates on our webpage for Anera. If you check out our response log, Anera response log, I think there are frequently asked questions and how you can support, and there might be a template on there if I remember correctly. If Americans Only Knew is another amazing website that you can look at. It gives you the context of the situation and does a really great job of collecting data and presenting data of the conflict or the, between Israel and Palestine for the last 5 or 6 decades. And I believe they have templates for writing to Congress members as well.
So I'm just writing that down. So if we get asked if Americans, sorry, you said if Americans knew.
If AmericansOnlyKnew.com, it's actually a great page that looks at information in terms of, what's been happening in the West Bank, and not in the West Bank, but Palestine and Israel.
Another question, I don't know, I think for either of you. Many of us are frequently approached on LinkedIn by individuals in Palestine asking for contributions to the GoFundMe campaigns to help them get their families out of Gaza. Most of us don't have any reason to doubt any of the veracity. In fact, I think a lot of us know people there personally. But it feels like it's just a tiny drop in a countless bucket. The person said, I wonder what you'd recommend as to making donations that way and what you might advise. And actually, in addition to that, I'd like to add a question to Sandra, because I know a few months ago there was an issue with the Anera donation page. How can people make sure they are actually donating to either these people or to organizations?
Yeah, I'll take start. One of the things that I have to say about these GoFundMe pages, and you said it's a drop in the bucket, but for that person, it's a important drop, and a lot of these people were doing GoFundMe pages because they were working with an organization in Egypt that was supporting Palestinians in Gaza. Well, they were getting paid to get people in Gaza out of Gaza and into Egypt. There were roughly 104,000 Palestinians who have left Gaza, mostly through Egypt, and now about 40,000 have gone to different places. 62,000 are still in Egypt. So you have requests from different people. You have people who are still wanting to get out, people in Egypt who are struggling to make ends meet, and people who have left and also having a very difficult time getting established. I would say that if you know the person or it was recommended from somebody, I would say that if you have the sources to, yes, support them, because there's a huge need. Everybody's just looking for just looking at how they can get their families out. And I say this all the time, I can't even imagine going from having a home over your head, putting your kids in school, having 1 or 2 cars, having a good job, to reaching out and asking people to support you and providing a donation. Even making that step to ask for that money is a great amount of it takes a great amount of strength. And I think that if you have the sources, and I would definitely say I would encourage you to do that. In terms of organizations, Jared, I think that it's important to make sure that you're on the right page. That sometimes if you look at the link, it might have one word or an extra letter in the name. A quick glance, you would think you're on the actual page, but you're not. A good way to do that is to make sure that some of the other links work, that you can go into the other links from the page. If you get the link from somebody, I would actually do a manual search on Google and go to the Anera page itself. It's Anera.org, for example. Other organizations are the same. You can go to SaveTheChildren.org, and they have a link where you can click and donate. And I would think the safest way is to go to the actual homepage and do the click from that page, and that would ensure it. Sadly, I think people are taking advantage of the situation and creating these fake accounts to try to get money channeled into them.
Sandra, the next one is for you. The person said, thanks, Sandra. I appreciate if you'd expand on what you just said now. That was in reference to Kamala Harris. So the next part is, Kamala Harris' hand-wringing words are barely distinguishable from Biden's. What gives you the idea that her presidency would be any less pro-Zionist? From outside the US, it doesn't seem to offer any hope for a shift. She hasn't acknowledged rulings from the ICJ or the ICC, has she? I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add or
yeah, I have this to say. Regardless of who wins this election, I think it's a very important election year, because the people have to make it clear that the ceasefire and a just solution for Palestine, and it's in Israel's best interest. If you want to look at Israel's security, it's Israel's best interest and their security to have peace in the region. What we're seeing now with Lebanon, with Palestine, situation is not in Israel's interest. It's not in the regional's interest. It's not in the global interest. So we need to push, regardless of who will be elected as president. We need to push that. I think that as we all know, and as as politicians do, they're very careful in terms of what they say and what they promise and how they move things. But they hear what is happening. They hear what is being asked for them. So we just need to keep pushing that and know that regardless of who's elected, we want to hold them accountable to ensure that there is a ceasefire.
There's a last question. Are the Palestinians aware of the UN resolutions? Sorry, although Israel will not abide with the UN, is there encouragement to be gained? I can't imagine how the Palestinians make it through a day. Any comment or anything on that?
Yeah, Palestinians are very much aware. We follow the news on very closely regarding the new resolutions, the previous resolutions. You could probably get a 6-year-old to quote you UN Resolution 194 and what that means. We're very politically educated population because of the fact that the occupation has been happening, and every generation that is alive right now has lived through occupation, oppression, and some kind of war. So they are aware, and it does provide hope, because in the end, like I said, it shows that there is solidarity and support, regardless of the fact that this is still being supported on a large scale level by different governments, the US included. It shows that people on the ground, it shows that the UN agencies and UN institutions do see that there has to be an end and there has to be a just solution, and these UN resolutions show us that. So it is encouraging. I agree with you. I can't imagine how my fellow Palestinians in Gaza make it through the day, But I think one thing that we all have to acknowledge is that we are all seeing this, we are all witnessing it. I think especially when those first images, we were in shock and horror seeing those images. We're all affected by it. Secondhand trauma is very real. I think we take that with us, and using that and pushing for an end to this and a ceasefire is how we can use some of that pain and some of that anger.
We are basically at the end. Again, thank you very much from all of us for being here. I've also received quite a few messages on my phone, one pointing out that I did struggle to hold back the tears. It was very, very moving. Thank you very much for being here. Quite a few messages just of thank you from a variety of people. We will be sharing the recordings, and I think there's a lot to be learned. So a massive thank you, and to Hani in his absence.
And thank you for putting this together. I think these kind of discussions are extremely important. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Sandra.